Hi everyone and welcome to the latest edition of On the Whistle, where I'm absolutely delighted to say that we've got another Sunderland win to talk through. This time, arguably even more impressively than at Hull City, a 2-1 win at Luton Town in what, if we're honest, was a pretty brutal game. Sorry that I'm coming to you from my home, well, it's not really a studio, but a room at home rather than Kenilworth Road, but as you can imagine, 3 games in a week in 2 days is quite demanding logistically, so it was a little bit easier to come and do it from home. I was so impressed with Sunderland last night, more in terms of the character than the performance necessarily. I think you've got to be realistic and acknowledge that Luton had the better of the game and they had more of the ball. They certainly had more of the territory. I know that there's always going to be a bit of a debate about Luton's playing style and whether people like to watch it, whether people don't like to watch it. I think what you have to acknowledge is that they are exceptionally good, especially at home, at forcing other teams to play in their own half. I thought their press, particularly in the first half, was exceptional. It's not very often that teams are so good in their pressing that Sunderland essentially find it borderline impossible to play out from the back. And, I think we have to acknowledge that Sunderland in some ways were a little bit fortunate. I think if you give up as many sort of shots as they did, if you give up as many set-piece opportunities as they did, if you lose the ball in your own half as much as they did, there are going to be nights where you lose the game. And if you played that game, 10 times, maybe there'd be a different result in some of them. However, having said that, I have nothing but, praise and positives really to come at it from a Sunderland perspective for a few reasons. One, because for the most part, the way they defended their box I thought was exceptional. And I think that's maybe a big difference to what you've seen since Sunderland came back into the Championship, where maybe they've looked a little vulnerable sometimes from set pieces and defending their box. If you think back to 2 years ago in that playoff semi-final at Luton Town, I know that basically half the defence was injured and Sunderland didn't really have any defenders. You might remember Adji Elise basically had to come on while he was still pretty much injured, and that had big consequences for next season because he suffered a recurrence. That's how much Sunderland was struggling. If you contrast that to last night, Chris Mepham, another towering performance at the heart of defence. Dennis Serkin, we didn't see him getting forward as we know he can do much last night, but defensively strong. Luke O'Nien, very, very good yet again in defending his box. And so for all I think Luton will feel like they were hard done by and should have got more out of the game, Anthony Patterson didn't have too many saves to make. He made a really good one from McGuinness from a corner where he clawed it sort of onto the bar, and he made an excellent one from Adebayo in the second half, flying high to his right. But it wasn't as if he was constantly making sort of worldy saves. I think obviously a big moment of controversy in the game was that Luton felt they should have taken the lead just before half-time. Having watched it back, initially I thought it was a very harsh decision to rule Clark offside. He was standing in front of Patterson, clearly sort of blocking him, but he had moved away by the time that the flick-on was made at the near post. When you watch it back, he does try and head the ball before Morris makes contact with it. So I don't think it was a shocking decision, even if I can understand Luton's frustrations. So loads of positives from Sunderland perspective, and then of course more than anything else, the fact they scored again 2 excellent goals, really clinical moments of real composure from 2 young players who really have no right to be that calm and finish that with that level of composure. So yeah, for sure, Sunderland rode their luck in certain moments, but to be honest, I think that I know that Luton at the moment the table looks very negative for them, but I think if they reproduce that level of performance, particularly at home, for the rest of the season, I think they'll be up there in the top 6. And I think they'll win so many games at home that we'll look back later in the season and say what a tremendous 3 points for Sunderland to take. So let's have a look at your questions. A lot of them are on a similar theme, so I may move a few of them into one, but hopefully you'll sort of get the idea. Joe Smith says, best win of the season by a long way. Thought Sunderland showed incredible amount of guts and bravery. The type of performance that promotion contenders turn in, so proud tonight. I think that's obviously a big thing people are taking away, feeling really proud of their team because of the resilience they showed, the fact that they didn't allow themselves to be bullied, really defended the shirt with a performance, and I can totally appreciate that. Chris Liddell says, is the actual team spirit and togetherness and never say die attitude shown tonight as important as the win? Yeah, I totally agree with that, Chris. I think that these kind of wins give you so much as a group because they're such a strong, bond and experience when you go through a really difficult game like that. But you get through it and, you think about look at the celebrations from the final whistle. The players absolutely loving it in front of the fans. Players like Isidore, who I think now you can see really feel part of this group and really feel part of the club. So I definitely think that's sort of a big thing that they'll take away from the win tonight, is that unity and that sense of togetherness. I think that's really sort of important. Ross says, is that the best result of the season so far, given the context of the game, Luton's performance, squad quality, etc.? Yeah, I said on Twitter after the game that for me it was the best win of the season, not in terms of the all-round performance, but I just think because how difficult it was to play in those circumstances away from home. The fact that it was just a couple of days after another really tough away game at Hull, I think you have to add that to the mix. For me, that was sort of the best performance of the season because of the way that they put bodies on the line, the way they dug in, the way they were really resilient and found a way to show some quality in the moments they had it. I did sort of post that myself on Twitter, and I did get a couple of replies saying people felt that the Burnley win was probably the better win because it was such a complete performance against a promotion contender, and Sunderland had a lot of control in that game. And I can totally understand that point of view, so I'd be willing to sort of concede that. But for me, Ross, yeah, I agree that for me, because of the sort of context around the game, because of the spirit shown, that was, for me, the best win of the season so far. Question here from Olaf, who says, Job's on yellow card, 4 yellows after the squabble after the final whistle. 9 games until the clear out. Can we manage a game without him? Feels worse than missing Hume for a game, in my opinion. Yeah, really good spot, Olaf. So obviously there was that scrap at the final whistle. We started because Mepham challenged Kaminski, who came up from the corner. Fairly, I should add, won the ball. The final whistle then blew and there was a bit of afters, and then there was a huge pile-on. I'm sure you've all seen the footage of Luke 09 jumping in as Luke does. So there was about 4 players across the 2 teams who took a yellow from that. Job was one of them. Interestingly, and I think what I would say is it probably more significant Olaf is Chris Rigg was obviously booked early in the game, which means he's now also on 4 yellow cards. So you have Trey Hume, Job and Chris Rigg on a yellow. Now, I think we've seen from the season so far that Sunderland can go a game without Job. He's obviously a huge player. He's been brilliant all season. I mean, I think Brown showed last night that he's ready to step in. The concern would be is if Bellingham and Rigg got another yellow card in the same game, because that would mean they would both be missing. With Samed still injured, that would force a pretty significant reshuffle for Labrise. That would obviously be far from ideal. It would be fairly similar. I don't remember last year, Ballard and 09 got suspended for the same game. And so Triantis and Sealtat coming against Birmingham at home, they'd never played together before, so that was far from ideal. Credit to them, they did well and Sunderland won. But yeah, I agree with Olaf, it would be a big miss, but I think it can be manageable as long as him and Rigg don't get booked again in the same game. That would obviously be far from ideal, because then it'll mean a fairly significant reshuffle. So fingers crossed Sunderland can avoid that. And Hume, again, doing well to not get a yellow card in another game. He's managing that so well. Hopefully, he can stay off that 5th yellow until Ballard gets back fit, because if he picks up a 5th one when Ballard's fit, I think you can move 09 out there and play sort of like a back 3 with Ballard and Mepham as well. And that would obviously, that wouldn't be as big as a loss as it would be now, where it would be hard to see who comes in. So yeah, definitely want to watch, I think, but hopefully, yeah, as I say, as long as they don't get them at the same time, then I think Sunderland will be okay. Similar sort of thing from Chris, SAFC lad, who says, do you think we need another DM if Sam Head is still injured in January? I think it's an interesting point. I think, like, again, I know, Dan Neil came under a bit of question for his part in Luton's goal, which is fair enough. Having said that, I think, Luton are sensational at set pieces. Players like Carlton Morris are going to find opportunities. I thought on the ball he had a really good game, especially in the second half. Should have had an assist for Connolly. Obviously played his part in Mundell's goal as well. So I think we're seeing Neil get back to his best form in the last couple of games. I really do believe that, so I'm not too concerned about it. I understand your point about the depth because it's such a long season. So I would agree with you that if Sam Head was still injured, it'd be a position I'd be looking at. The one thing I would say is that although it's frustrating at the moment, Sunderland do think Sam Head's going to be fit after the November international break. So I think we'll have, hopefully, a run of games before January where we can assess where Sam Head's at. So don't think that's something that we need to sort of rush into making a decision to do. So the Isteds, the Adventures of Mr. and Mrs. Isted, tweeted me and said, did we get lucky with grabbing the lead having made 0 tactical or personnel changes, or is Regis a genius and knew what he was doing all along? I had a right smile when this question came in because I thought it was a really interesting one, because we've spoke a few times this season about how Labrise doesn't make huge changes. He tends to leave things as late as he can, try to really value stability. There's been certain games where maybe we felt like that's cost Sunderland. Last night's an interesting one because what he actually said after the game is that he almost said that Sunderland got their rewards for doubling down despite a really difficult first half. They tweaked the shape a little bit in the first half to adjust, but generally speaking, they stuck to what they were doing. And what he said was that because Luton takes so many risks by going for a man-for-man marking system, a bit like Sunderland do, there was always a chance that just one little error would give Sunderland loads of space to break in, and that he always felt that the players that he's got have got the quality to exploit it. And that, of course, is what happened. So Isidore goes for a header. Luton claimed it was a foul, but it wasn't given. The ball then runs towards Brown, and errors made and Riggs in. Very similar for the second goal as well. So Labrisa's view was definitely that Sunderland were rewarded for not panicking and for actually sticking to what they'd planned for. And so, yeah, but I think it's a really good and interesting question. I did think that, again, he got the subs right last night. I thought Roberts did really well when he came on, when he was fresh. And Connolly, again, looks a really handy player, doesn't he? Very sensible. So, yeah, I think we can... I totally accept the point. There's definitely been times this season where I felt Brees has left it too late to make changes. But I think for last night, we can give him some credit because it did pay off in the end. John asks, can Bournemouth recall Chris Mepham in January? I don't know. I don't know this for sure, but I would say is that I would suggest it's highly likely. It would be highly irregular for a season-long loan deal to be done without a January recall. Pretty much every club does it now. Mainly they do it because it means that if the player isn't playing, that obviously doesn't work for Bournemouth, so it gives them the opportunity to move him on elsewhere. So I would be stunned if there wasn't a recall clause, but I wouldn't be too concerned at the moment because ultimately Mepham's playing regularly, he's playing well, and he's building his value to Bournemouth. So right now, I wouldn't be too concerned. But yeah, I would imagine, I'd be very surprised if Bournemouth didn't have a recall clause. So that will be one to watch as we move closer to the window. Okay, so last one before I leave you. Inevitably, a lot of you asking about the top two. Cal says, does Sunderland still have gears to go through? Billy just says, is it on? Eye emoji. And Gaz asks, when do we start talking about being automatic contenders? Look, for me, I think Leeds are going to win the league. I think they have the best squad. I think they have a proven manager at this level. They were unlucky not to go up last year. And I think their performance date of the season suggests they're going to come out on top. What we always say about the Championship is the teams with the biggest budgets, the deepest squads, the parachute payments, it'll win out over the season because they'll be able to cope with injuries and fatigue the best. So I still fancy Burnley to be right up there, Sheffield United to a certain extent, and we know what this division's like. Someone like Borough, they'll come through over the second half of the season. But there's no reason why Sunderland can't be up there. I think that they're competitive in every game, their home form's really good, and if they keep that up over the season, they'll be up there. Have we seen a level of dominance in every single game to suggest that they're really, really strong top two contenders? Maybe not yet, but the individual quality's there, the spirit's there. I think we're definitely talking about a strong top six contender here. And who knows, a good January window, an ambitious January window, you never know. So to be honest, I think Sunderland are in a great place, not thinking about it, going under the radar, going about their business quietly. But I'm really excited about this season. I get more excited with every single game. But for now, I'm not going to go quite so far as to say they're genuine top two contenders, but if we're still having this conversation in a month's time, then why not? Let's just enjoy it. Certainly exciting times. Thanks so much for watching and sending your questions in. I'll see you from the Stadium Light on Saturday for On the Whistle after the Oxford United game, and hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood, another 3 points.